Good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. My name is Naomi. I go by the How To Chick, and I am here this evening to talk to you about a second facet and possibly, arguably, a more important facet of why you still aren't ready to move into your next season. And tonight's topic is this: your purpose requires a budget. My name is Naomi. I go by the How To Chick. I'm a child of God, a wife, a mother, an attorney, a coach, a mentor, a speaker, and an author. And I believe most importantly that you can do anything, but you cannot do everything, and you must choose wisely. Last week, I came on the topic why you're not ready, why you can't move, why you're stuck, and you cannot seem to do what needs to be done to make it to the next season. And as we closed, I said, you might have noticed we didn't talk about financial stewardship. That's not something that I felt that could fit into the points that we had last week. Tonight, we're talking specifically about finances. And I want to say this before I say anything else. Get out your pen, get out your paper, because I am going in. I'm going to give you a minute to get in the room. Here's the truth that most people do not, will not, cannot say out loud, but you need to hear it straight. If you cannot manage your money, you will sabotage your purpose. The word tells us he who is faithful in little will be made ruler over much. And this isn't really about money. It's about management. Money isn't everything, but money reveals everything. As Christians, we often worry that desiring to have and wanting to have money means that we necessarily are attracted to evil, the love of money, that is, being the root of all evil. But money itself is not evil. Money is just a tool. But money, because it is a tool, it must be effectively managed. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So, if you've gotten your pen and your paper and you're in the room and you're ready, we are going to get started tonight on the topic. If you can't steward your resources, you will not be able to sustain your assignment. I am a coach, and as many of you know, I'm a codependency coach. I help people move from lives that are stuck in caregiving mode, stuck in provider mode, stuck in doing for others what doing for others what those individuals should be doing for themselves, to lives of purpose. But one of the things that I've recognized in my years of working with people who deal with this is that one of the first ways codependency shows up is in finances. Parents who want to buy for their children everything they never had, and they're sacrificing their retirement, their safety net, their financial security in the long term for the temporary feeling of being successful. But it's not just an emotional thing, and it's not just a codependency thing. It is a management thing. And I want to remind us again tonight that we like to talk about, as Christians, our purpose, our assignment, the impact that we're making, our destinies, what we are called to do in the kingdom and for the kingdom. But sometimes what we forget is that, well, we don't forget it. We just fail to acknowledge is that it takes resources. If you've ever worked in a church and had, as a ministry leader, been given a budget and wondered, well, Lord, what am I supposed to do with this? Then you understand. Purpose is operational. You have to be able to do, to make impact. And God doesn't just give us vision, He also gives us a responsibility. And that responsibility is to steward not just the talents, not just the energy, not just the time resources and the creativity resources He's given us, but also the financial resources that He's given us. Money touches everything. And the way that you treat and relate to your money is a huge factor, a huge acknowledgement of who is Lord of your life. And I want to say this: the word of God says, he who is faithful in little will be made ruler over much. But the word also says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Money matters because it touches your obedience. It requires a demonstration of where you are and are not disciplined. It shows your ability to build and the capacity to sustain what God gives you. The word of God in Deuteronomy says God is the one that gives us the power to sustain wealth. But in Luke, where the word says he who's faithful in little will be made ruler over much, God is really saying if we're struggling to manage what we have, and don't get me wrong, I do understand the cost of living is through the roof, the rent is too high, but God gives wisdom and strategy. And so, as people who are children of the King, it is important to recognize that we must be in alignment. That means what we say, what we think, and what we do must necessarily coalesce. And so money isn't just currency. It's not just what we use to pay our rent and our bills. It's not what we use to buy those little trinkets that make us feel better for a few minutes until we get the credit card bill. Money also competes with us. It competes with the Spirit of God for our trust, our security, and our decision making. How many of us recognize that when we have money, we are far more free with our spending? I saw a meme the other day. This young woman, EJ Speaks, and I love her. She's hilarious. She posted the video of what happens when people get their tax returns, and she was out at the restaurant, and she was like, matter of fact, I'll take the whole chef. I'll take the whole bar. When we have, or we perceive that we have more than we usually do, are we putting our trust in God? Are we asking for wisdom in how we're spending and what we're doing? For many of us, the answer to that is no. For many of us, we are not worried about consulting God until resources are scarce. We are not interested in asking for God's input in our decision making until we can only pay one of three bills. And here's where most people get it twisted. They think money problems are about their income, but most of the time, the truth is our money problems are about our allegiance. Who do we trust? Is it God? Is it his instruction? Is it his will? Is it the plans that we claim to want to walk in that he has created for our lives? Or are we just going by instinct until we get to a problem that our resources, our finances, our capacity cannot handle? See, if God can't trust you to wisely steward $10, $100, that $52,000 paycheck, how do you think that he is going to bless you with the budget that you want for this business that you're planning to start? And you're saying you need seed money of $100, $200, $300,000. The truth is purpose requires provision, but provision requires trust. And that means we have to be willing to submit to God at all points in our decision making around our finance. Point 2 is money management builds our capacity. I've talked about capacity before, so I'm not going to harp on it tonight, but recognize purpose is not just about what you're called to do. It's about your capacity to do it. And money is one of the main tools that God uses to build our capacity. I remember in Genesis, the word tells us that Isaac became rich, and it was like he became very wealthy. And God made a point to say that he was very wealthy, because in biblical times, obviously flocks and your sheep, the land that you had, those were your assets. Proverbs tells us that it's important for us to be diligent to know the state of our flocks, to attend to our herds, because riches are not forever. It's Proverbs 27. And what God was really saying is study, pay attention to what you have. Do good things with what you have. Be diligent and watch over what you have. And I remember one of my money mindsets that I had to break in my early 20s was I don't have enough to pay the bill, right? I'm short on the rent, so I might as well go out to eat. I might as well go out with my friends. I might as well go buy myself a new pair of shoes because I'm $200 short. So this $30, this $40 isn't going to matter. And what God is saying is steward well what you have, not what you wish you have, not what you're praying for, but what you have now. How you handle, and what you do with what you have now determines what you are going to be found to be capacity of holding. And what that really means is if God cannot trust us to wisely use what is in our hands, he's not going to open the floodgates of heaven. I had to learn how to budget, and this was, there's probably 1,000 budgeting softwares available now. At the time I was using Mint, which is free. It's really a tracking software. I do not recommend one over another. My husband and I have done 1,000 different ways, and right now we're working off of a little spreadsheet he created, and I'm perfectly happy with that. But let me make this plain. If you are not tracking what comes in and comes out of your bank account, you're not going to be able to multiply it. If you cannot control where you're spending funds, your money will control you. And if you waste your money, you will not sustain any increase you get. And this is something I see for those of you who follow finance gurus on YouTube or TikTok. They'll always say, if you get a raise, do not absorb the raise. However much your check differs, and it's crazy because after paying taxes, after contributing to our 401ks and paying for our, benefits, in many cases, you can get a $20,000 raise and see a net increase to your check of less than a couple of $100s. It is important to be able to track it, steward it, and use it wisely. And one thing the financial gurus say that I highly recommend is if you do get a raise, not to expand your lifestyle to that raise. Now, for some of us, we are living so close to the edge that keeps us out of a situation where we would be falling into debt. It is important to sit down and make a realistic budget, taking into account what's really going on. And people are struggling right now. I am fully aware of the cost of utilities. I am paying them. I am fully aware of the cost of groceries. I am paying it. But when we have the mindset of, well, my electric bill is $700, I might as well be comfortable in my house. Well, now your electric bill is about to be $915. Pay attention. Use your programmable thermostats. Turn off the lights you're not using. Unplug things. That's stewardship. That's management. And also, when you find yourself, and this is point 3, when you find yourself faced with a decision between cutting out something that gives you small temporary pleasure and joy and something that you need to sustain your purpose, make a decision that takes into consideration your future. Your purpose demands financial discipline. And I'm going to give you guys a quick little story. When I was, I think, 23, I decided to go to law school. And at the time I was living in Atlanta. You guys have heard my story of my tale of woe of having to work 3 jobs to pay my rent and my student loans and my car note because I was stupid and bought a brand new car and got tricked because I was stupid. And so I had these 3 jobs and I was constantly exhausted. And I was like, when I was off, I wanted to go. And once I had already taken the LSAT, I wanted to go and hang out with my friends. I wanted to go and do fun things. But God convicted me to pay off my undergrad student loans pay them off, not make payments. So I wasn't in one of those income-based repayment plans. I was paying on the standard plan, and God was like, you're going to pay these off. I didn't have many. I was very blessed to not have many student loans. I had scholarships, and this was years and years ago. College was not quite as high as it is now. And what I mean by that is it's high as a giraffe's neck right now. And back then it was like at the giraffe's ankle bone. So I was actually capable of doing it. I just didn't want to do it because I wanted to be comfortable and I wanted to have fun. But the Spirit of God convicted me. He said, sit down, write down all your debt. This is before YouTube, before, you had gurus telling you, giving you 1,000 ways to do it. And I had to sit down and I told my friends, I'm not going to be going out anymore. I sat down with my siblings and with my mom and I told them, I was like, this is my plan. I want to pay off all my debt. So I won't be doing this and I won't be doing that. And I don't remember what we were talking about, more likely, me lending money and things like that. And I sat down and I had a conversation with myself. No more going out, no more buying a new dress every week just because, no more getting your hair done. And, at the time I still enjoy getting my nails done, but at the time, I was single, I'm living my best life. So I wanted my hair and nails done because I was in sales. And so I had to learn to do my own hair. And I was fortunate. I used to work trade shows. I had the supplies to do my own hair at home. I knew how to do my hair. I just didn't enjoy doing my hair. I enjoyed going to sit in the chair, and I sat down and I made the budget and I was like, I am going to stick with this. I'll go in for my trims, but I'm going to do my own hair. I'm going to do my own nails. I'm going to cut out eating out, going out with my friends, and I'm going to make a budget and stick to it and pay these loans off. So that was because I knew that I wanted to go to law school and I did not want to roll undergraduate loans into my grad school loans. And so I knew that doing what I wanted to do and getting to the next level, because my goal was to come out of undergrad with less than $100,000 in debt. I didn't know what the job market was going to look like. I didn't know what I was going to be able to do as far as a career. I wasn't even sure the type of attorney I wanted to be at the time. And so I set a goal. And Luke 14:28 tells us, and this is about building. Which one of you who wants to build a tower doesn't sit down before you do that and count the cost? But I want you to really think about it. In the things that you have desired and planned to do, have you counted the cost? Have you sat down and actually done a budget? Because there have been seasons of my life when my kids were really little and I was exhausted, where we would sit down and recognize that we were spending the same money 3 times over. And what that means is we had this pot of money that we thought at the time we optimistically, let's put it this way, operated on a 50-30-20 budget, which means 50% went to our absolute needs and our bills. 30% went to living expenses and wants, and 20% went to tithes and savings. And that was idealistic, right? It was our goal. We had the capacity to do it, but when we were not tracking, we would find ourselves expanding that need category far beyond the 30%. So we might be tithing, but we weren't saving. Or we might be putting things we want on credit and building debt. Money answers everything. And so the way that we take accountability is by counting the cost. What is it that we want to accomplish? In this season, for me, it's retirement, right? And having my children get through school without debt. And that's been very important. So what I do is I literally put that in my budget. But for you, what is it? Ministry, maybe, needs funding. If you have always wanted to retire one of your parents, that is going to require funding. Vision needs resources, and impact requires infrastructure, and being financially undisciplined will delay what God is trying to build and the prayers that you have prayed and that He is trying to answer through you. So what ends up happening is that we find ourselves depending on others when God wants us to be a resource. I remember praying, Lord, and my mother, I think, said this to me. She's like, I don't want to be a borrower. I want to be a lender. And that stuck with me. And that's been part of my prayer. Lord, enlarge my territory, make me a lender and not a borrower. But the next thing is you will shrink your purpose, your vision, your understanding of what is possible for you to match your habits. And I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but if you haven't done a budget and you know that you're a shopper, that you're a spender, that you're a buyer, that you have little habits that build big impact over the month, you have to recognize that bad stewardship doesn't just affect your bank account. It doesn't just affect your credit score or your debt. It limits your capacity to be obedient. You cannot use the same dollar in 3 places. It's just not possible. And this is the reminder that I have for you tonight, because what ends up happening is we haven't counted the cost. We know we want to retire. And when we started working, our salary was so low, we were giving the minimum 3% to get the company match. And over the years, we've now been working 15 to 20 years. We've taken a couple of loans out, maybe one to buy a house, maybe one to finish paying off our grad school because we ran out of student loans. And now we're staring down the barrel at almost 50 of not having enough to retire. We never increased our retirement contributions, but our lifestyle has expanded. We've justified the new vehicle. We've justified the home renovation. We've justified the clothing because we need something new for an event. And we have failed to count the cost. And what I want to say to you tonight is it's not too late. It's never too late until it's over. It's not over until God says it's over. But if you are trying to build something, if you want to see God do something, recognize this: God is not blocking your access to money. He's trying to develop obedience, trust, and discipline in you. Money in the hand of someone without discipline is destruction. The book of Proverbs says that. But if you are aligned, if you have stopped to count the cost, if what you are saying, what you are doing, where you are spending your money align with the thoughts and the beliefs that you have about what God is doing, that money, whatever it is that you are stewarding into that purpose, will become a weapon. And it will allow a tool as it is intended to be, but a weapon of a tool that will allow you to move quickly and to build. Deuteronomy says this, and I think it's Deuteronomy 8. It says, you will remember the Lord your God because he's the one who gives you power to get wealth. And that's what I was talking about in the beginning, because God doesn't just give you the power to have money. He will actually give you the wisdom to steward it. The word says in the book of James, if you lack wisdom, ask it of the Lord. He gives it liberally without reproach. He's not going to be like that financial planner that my husband and I went to when we'd been married 2 years, and we took all of our bank statements and we were so proud of our little 10% savings and our little 10% tithings. And she started circling things and we got a little concerned. She had a red pen. I think it was a Sharpie actually. And she's taking her little calculator and she's like, you spent $717 on dining out last month. You can invest this. Stop. I wish I could say that we listened to her. I wish I could say that we immediately stopped. We didn't. But at a certain point, we did. And it is important to recognize that God is trying to advance his purposes through you. He is willing to bless you. He is willing to give you the resources that you need, but he needs to recognize that you're able to steward what he's doing well. So here's 3 takeaways from tonight, things that you can apply. One is recognizing, taking the time to sit down and actually audit your spending. Pull your bank accounts, write everything down, put it in categories. This isn't to make you feel bad. It's just to tell the truth about where you are. Your habits, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. Your habits are preaching louder than your prayers. What you do with your money reveals who you really trust. Second takeaway, stewardship creates capacity for your purpose. So start simple. If you don't have a budget, if you don't track your spending, if you are not a person who has all of your transactions pulled and categorized into an app, just start with a pen and paper. You guys know I'm a big journaler. Track every dollar. I don't ever recommend a single system because I think all of us brain a little differently. And there are people who need, flexibility in how they do things. So track your dollars, get a pen and paper, write it down, what you get after your taxes, what you have left after your tithes, what needs to be paid in each paycheck. Get intentional, save consistently, spend wisely, and limit use of debt instruments. And I know that in this season that can be very difficult for people because we don't want to give up all of the little amenities and the treats that we have as the cost of living expands at an unsustainable pace. But recognize this, you don't need more money first. You need a structure. And if you audit your spending, if you track every dollar, if you put yourself on a budget, you are going to see exactly where if you have never done this, exactly where you can cut and still maintain a quality of life that would be okay for you. And if it's not possible, there are those who are losing jobs, who have lost jobs, who have seen their income drop substantially. I've lived through that too. Doing this will help you make the hard decisions that allow you to pivot before time runs out. But the third takeaway from tonight is this: financial discipline protects the assignment that God has placed on your life. It protects the purpose, it protects the thing, the goal that you're praying for. So you have to decide right now, have I counted the cost? And if not, say this and mean it. I will not let my bad habits delay what God is calling me to build in this season. And write that down. Whatever tracking system you use, copy and paste that at the top. Or if you're using pen and paper, write it at the top. I will not let poor habits delay what God is building in me, through me in this season. Cut what needs to be cut. Fix that budget. Whatever needs to be fixed, fix it. Face the truth of your debt, whatever it is that you've been avoiding, and recognize that when you do that, God honors those steps. Because sometimes just seeing it on paper, I'm telling you, when that lady started circling and I could kind of see some of the names, I knew she was going to come back and tell me there's no need to be eating out that much. I knew that. I wasn't pleased with it. I wasn't happy with it, but she was right. Why? Because we wanted to buy a home. And that pivot helped us to save more money quickly. This is about counting the cost. Your purpose requires a budget. So let's steward it well. And this goes back to what I always say, so I'll say it again and I mean it. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. A dollar cannot be in 3 places at once. Part of good stewardship and managing what God has given you is ensuring that you are aware and actively choosing where and on what you spend what you have been given. I hope that this has been helpful to someone. If you complete the exercise and find all manner of unwarranted, unnecessary, ridiculous spending that you are ready and able to cut, I want you to come back and tell me about it, because this works. This works. And it will propel you forward in whatever it is you are trying to do. Simply sitting down, writing it down, and taking accountability will allow God to give you the wisdom to know what to do, even if there's not enough. And trust me, I could do a whole nother live on that, but I won't. I'll just say good night. I'll see you next week on Wisdom Wednesday, and be blessed.